Thanks for staying with us tonight on Weather Unfiltered. Want to bring you the very latest on Tropical Storm Melissa and what we know. It's likely to be a prolonged heavy rain event that could cause some flash flooding and landslides in the Caribbean. And we would urge you to make preparations to protect life and property now and have those completed by tomorrow. It's a very slow-moving storm. It's nearly stationary right now, but high traffic intensity uncertainty, meaning we don't have an exact take on where it could be headed and what its intensity may be, although a slow drift to the west, and right now a Category 4 is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. At present, though, it is a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, westerly movement at just 1 mile per hour, so you could basically almost call it stationary at this point, encountering some westerly wind shear, and quite a bit of the convection or thunderstorms have been blown off to the east or southeast, with the center of circulation right where that spiraling icon is. But here's a look at the forecast. Again, a slow drift north or west over the next several days, but that forecast over the next 5 days is for a Category 4 hurricane with winds at 130 miles per hour. So up to this point, one of the big concerns has been primarily rain. But now, increasingly, winds look to be a major player with this system as well. Hurricane watches in effect here. That does include through Haiti, tropical storm watches in Jamaica. So again, rushing to completion all your preparations and have those completed by tomorrow. That's the very latest on Melissa.
Melissa is poised to join a list of extremely notorious and destructive tropical systems, from Hurricane Harvey's flooding rain in Texas to the way mountainous terrain enhanced rainfall and flooding from Helene in the Carolinas. And of course, we can't forget about the devastating Category 5 winds that Dorian battered the Bahamas with for an extended period of time. So we want to bring in, our expert, Dr. Knabb, to talk about some of these, really notorious hurricanes, each moving very slowly. Well, at least Harvey and Dorian moving very slowly. And then the terrain enhancement of Helene, which, while it moved quick, it dumped a lot of rain and it dumped it over areas with mountains.
And I think it's a valid question and a thought to think that could Melissa have aspects of all of those hurricanes and be a really bad hurricane for the Caribbean?
Yeah, perhaps, because again, as we bring in Dr. Knabb, we've got the potential really historic rain, or just absolutely, to the point that we can't even, show it, represent it properly with our color scheme. Then we've got terrain in these islands. And do we have a slow-moving, high-end hurricane as well, like what we had with Dorian?
Yeah, so just to put this all in perspective for those of us here in the U.S. who have been through a lot of these systems, I'm going to make the case that Melissa has the potential in the Caribbean to be Harvey and Dorian and Helene combined. All the worst aspects of those systems. Just start with what Harvey did in Texas. We're talking about a tropical storm over relatively flat terrain that didn't hardly move. That in and of itself was a flooding disaster. And the amount of water that even a tropical storm can dump when it doesn't move very quickly is why we keep harping on with Melissa the concern about this category slow and it meandering around, and even if it doesn't become a hurricane, even if it doesn't make landfall, being a flooding disaster. That in and of itself could be life-threatening for the Caribbean.
Maybe the only difference here is that Houston was a major metropolitan area, right? Would there be large metropolitan areas in Hispaniola you'd be worried about, or do you think it will affect less population?
No, the Port-au-Prince in Haiti, Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, Kingston in Jamaica. These are all on the southern side of those islands that are going to get onshore flow and are in the lower spots. So, metro areas, even if they didn't have the mountains around them, would be at risk. So that is one part about Melissa that concerns us. Now, when you consider Dorian, how it was a stalled hurricane over island nation. Okay, now you're amping up the problem because a slow-moving system that also brings a lot of wind to an island nation, you're isolated, you can't evacuate, you can't recover as easily.
Right. I mean, this was one that just sat over those communities for an extended period of time. And when we were talking about, in the case of Dorian, Category 5 winds, Melissa, forecast to get to Cat 4. Could it get to Cat 5? Maybe. Could we be looking at that affecting one of these or multiple island nations?
Yeah. Now, the Bahamas don't have the mountains.
Right.
So if you take the worst of Harvey, slow-moving tropical storm, and the worst of Dorian, an island nation dealing with a hurricane that stalls over them. And then you add aspects of Helene, which was moving along, as you mentioned.
Right.
But even while it was moving along, the mountains squeezed out so much rainfall that was in the multiple feet, more than 2 feet locally. That was a disaster, and it wasn't something that stalled over the Appalachians, and they aren't an island nation. So you wrap our brain around this. Everything that was bad about Harvey, everything that was bad about Dorian, everything that was bad about Helene, all happening at once in a place like Hispaniola or Jamaica.
Yeah, I mean, we think about how hard it was, as you point out, to get resources there to western North Carolina because of how cut off you became with the landslides and the devastating flooding. If we see that on an island, worst case scenario.
Yeah, so imagine if the Appalachians were out on an island and Helene stalled over them for several days. That's what we're talking about, the potential in the Caribbean.
Obviously, that could be potentially worst case scenario.